My name's Starsky and welcome to From the Studio on Club and TV. And in this episode, I'm going to be taking a look at how to create a track like Armin Van Buuren.
Can you feel the...
So that's a quick snippet of where we're headed, a nice tough bass line, punchy kick and some really uplifting pads and a melodic top line, all bouncing around at a healthy 138 BPM. And this is pretty typical of Armin Van Buuren. Although he makes lots of different types of tracks, these elements are in pretty much all of them. And here's where I'd normally show a gratuitously erotic picture of the kit I'm using, but as we're only using the computer, maybe we'll just have to have that, or maybe just the Instagram fake plants, which are pretty much essential part of any setup these days. I'm using this Moog Sub37 just as a controller keyboard, but I did use it for one tone that I just couldn't get from any of the soft synths, and that's this really big, fat, low distorted bass tone. So side chance is all about 138 BPM or thereabouts, and that's where we're headed with this one as we heard in the intro. So bearing in mind our tempo, let's start taking a look at probably the most important single element, and that's the kick drum. We want something really punchy that can pump out a fast tempo without becoming muddy. This means we want something short and snappy, but with sort of plenty of punch and plenty of bottom end. We don't want something that's too long and deep as at this tempo that'll just turn into some sort of bassy mush. And in a club you'll end up just hearing a big sort of bass rumble and reverbing around the room rather than the hard rhythm section, which is what we're looking for. I've used Rob Papen's punchness. I really like this. You can really tweak the sounds to your own liking. But it's not quite right yet. It needs something else. It needs that sort of initial high transient that forms a sort of the click at the start of a sound. The bit that pops out of your speaker, even on your tiny little iPhone speaker. It's basically the sort of tick, tick, tick you can hear from someone else's earbuds when you're on the bus. And that's not the bass you're hearing, it's the initial transient. And I'm using Wave Alchemy's Evolution for this. So each of the drum sounds has got its own sort of transient layer. And if I go into here, you can see all the different transient layers there are. And they're so important that obviously this has got lots of them. So as I bring that click in and out, you can really hear the massive difference it makes to the overall tone of the kick drum. Just gives the kick loads more definition. And you can see here in Logic, I've got two identical tracks, one with the main kick and one with the click underneath. And what we end up with is a kick that's got a lot of punch in those frequencies that sort of pound your chest through a club's PA, but it's also got that high transient to keep the click, and it's nice and tight and it's not running into itself. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And now we've got the kick sorted, we can move on to the part it has to work alongside perfectly, and that's the bass line. I've decided in this to make something along the lines of rah rah rah. I'm not trying to copy it, but create a track that uses some of the elements, learning from how it's been put together and how it's been arranged. So here I thought I'd play with the rhythmic feel of rah rah rah, and probably the most obvious part there is the bass line and the kick are playing triplets in parts, so it's only playing 3 notes between every beat, where most dance, techno, pop or whatever, pretty much everything else uses 4, and that's why rah 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 sounds so distinctive. But again, I played this tone using 2 sounds, one for deep bass that you can feel in your stomach this time, and one for giving a higher tone so you can hear it. It's a bit like the kick, one for your body and one for your ears. And I've also added a tiny bit of reverb here that you can hear. If I just play that for you. So you can hear that sort of pumping in and out, and normally if you put reverb on a bass you just end up with something that's boomy and sort of muddy and sounds disgusting. But overall it gives a really nice effect. It sounds to me almost like the kick drums breathing between every beat. But it creates a really nice sort of swing. So we've got the beats, we've got the kick, and we've got the bass line, which is a really fundamental part of any psytrance track. And then the next sort of fundamental part, which we've got to think about, are the chords and the pads. One thing all his tracks have got in common is a very musical chord structure with sort of bubbling arpeggios and a nice melodic top line, and all these generated from the initial chords. And he generally uses different mixes of pianos and pads and stabs. It's different on each track. It really depends on what the track needs. So here's just the simple chords. Nothing too dramatic there, is there? And then a stick-on LFO tool. Sounding a lot more like it now, isn't it? And then, you know, as with everything else, you want to start layering things. You got, that sounds quite nice, but it needs something else. It needs a little bit more of a sort of choral effect. So bring in another pad. And I've also created a little melody line over the top. That's sort of nice and subtle, but it sits in there. So, starting to feel really nice, but I still think it needs some sort of ephemeral, some sort of little airy flutters over the top. So I've put this thing here, this synth voice plus shimmer. Shimmer being the reverb I've used over the top. Sounds nice, but it's not quite there. So I'm going to bring that LFO tool back in. Starting to sound really, really nice, that. So let's bring the other bits in as well. But now we'll need to add a little bit more movement to everything, which we'll do using an arpeggiator or two. In this I've used two different arpeggios for the two main sections. One for the sort of main bass and kick rhythm section, and then another for the middle section with the pads. I've put quite a hard sounding one, sort of really biting sound that cuts through the mix to the tougher section with the kick and the bass. I'll just play that for you. And you can hear that's following the chords we've just put in the midsection, even though I'm using it in the main section. That doesn't have any chords, it just pulls the whole thing together. And I've used a more melodic sound in the midsection. So we're almost there, but there are a couple of glaring omissions. First is the main lead line. Listening to all of his tracks, he seems to use these really simple synth sounds that can cut through a mix. Often it just sounds like the initial patch, just a sort of simple sawtooth. Let's just find something like this. Let's have a look. Doesn't sound too far off already, does it? Let's add a bit of reverb to that. And now we want to use that sort of LFO tool sort of trick, or the compression trick. Let's try the compressor. And now it sounds almost like a delay, doesn't it? Nice effect. It's not perfect yet. It took 2 seconds, but let's see what I did. Not bad. Keeping the sort of rhythm, keeping that sort of triplety feel going. It's almost the initial tone. I've added an extra oscillator on the top and stuck it up about 7 semitones, so it just sort of gives a nice different sort of feel, but it's a really, really simple sound with the reverb doing that sort of bouncing effect. Let's have a listen to that with the rest of the stuff in that section. So we're getting really close now. We've got pretty much all the main elements except for the main vocal. Well, I'm obviously not going to show you how to write a vocal, but hopefully show you how to put a vocal onto a track and make it interesting. And I've just used a really simple phrase, can you feel the bass? Because if you can't, you need to turn it up so you can feel the kick in your chest and the bass in your stomach that took us so long to make earlier. And I've messed it up to fit the track you can see here. Firstly, I've pitched it low with this Harmonizer plugin from Eventide. Because it's quick and easy with this, you can just change the pitch by using this knob here.
Feel the bass. Can you feel the bass?
And the Harmonizer, or something like it, is really good for pitching the vocal in a track because it keeps the same timing, so it doesn't sort of stretch it as you go lower or compress it as you get higher like it would with a sample. Although at the end of the phrase, I then put the word bass into the sampler. And I've used the sampler there so I can pitch it down as I'm saying the word.
Bass.
And that sort of introduces the next section. And sort of slows things down a little bit. But just a different way of doing it, and a bit of fun as well. And then I've chopped the sample up.
Can you feel the bass? Can you feel the bass? Can you feel the
And as you can hear, there's a filter on there that's opening up as the track starts. Plus, I'm introducing some delay at the end there as well. And if we take a look at the automation on this channel, plenty of tracks of it. In fact, we've got so many tracks of automation, I ran out of tracks of automation. So there's a fair bit going on at the start of this. I've got the vocal that I've chopped up, so I've changed the timing of it, changed the pitch of it, I've put it in a sampler, I've added the delay, and I've put it through a filter as well. So there's 5 different things happening with the sort of really simple vocal in the first 8 bars. So just to give you an idea really, if you can do as much as you want, play around with it and have fun with it. So now we've got all the main parts. We've got the vocal, we've got the bass, we've got the kick, we've got the middle bit, we've got with the pads, we've got the arpeggios, we've got the main lead line. We just need to sort of somehow stitch it all together with some final touches and some ear candy. So I've used a lot of percussive elements in here which are used to sort of tie things together and just keep the beat rolling on. I've put some timpani in and some marching snares and some rolls. So if I play just these bits in blue at the bottom. And as I say, that's a bit of timpani and that weird sort of percussive loop, that's just me messing about with stuff and thinking that sort of fits with the rhythm. If I bring that in with the main beat and the bass. The beat works adequately without them, but with them they sort of add a little bit more life, they add a little bit more of a sort of professional polish. They're a little bit loud in the mix at the minute, they could do with bringing down, but they just add that little extra something that brings your mix from being a sort of demo into something more professional. So I've not got time to put everything together and play the whole thing in this, but if you want to hear it, you can download it from a Patreon page. And if you want to watch all this again, don't forget you can catch it anytime on Clubbing TV's YouTube channel. It's called Clubbing TV Official, all one word, and it's on our From the Studio playlist. And if you've any questions, just drop them in the comments and I'll see what I can do to answer them. And also, if you're into your production, check out my Starsky Carr YouTube channel, where I've got more sort of more technical and in-depth videos. So until next time, I'll catch you in the next episode of From the Studio.